the way we should think of the Bitcoin to equity ratio, the benchmark for Bitcoin is not gold, but equities. And the question is, why can't there be parity between Bitcoin and equities? Why shouldn't we be talking about something more like 100 to 1?
Billionaire venture capitalist and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel went totally off at the Bitcoin 2022 conference in Miami. He openly calls out Warren Buffett a sociopathic grandpa from Omaha and Bitcoin's enemy number one. Hello and welcome to Wealthy Value. In today's video, Peter Thiel, the lightning rod venture capitalist and PayPal co-founder, offered up what he called an enemies list on his attempt to call out anti-crypto investors while speaking at a prominent cryptocurrency conference in Miami, a crypto hotspot. Thiel's presentation of the list was the most striking moment at the conference. Thiel also criticized central banks around the world, slamming them for their slow uptake on digital technology. Make sure to stick around till the end of this video where Peter Thiel exposes top Bitcoin enemies and where the Bitcoin space is headed next. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the post notifications. Let's dive right into the video.
In the world of the 2010s, gold did pretty well, Bitcoin did extremely well, but the real competitor for Bitcoin is not Ethereum. That's a payment system. It's not even gold. It's something like the S&P 500. It's the stock market as a whole, and this is the way Bitcoin trades every day. If the stocks go up, Bitcoin goes up. Now it's like a highly levered Nasdaq stock on a day-to-day basis, and that is sort of, in a sense, the real competitor. And the question is whether we're headed towards a kind of 1970s style world where it's higher inflation, more regulation. The way we should think of the Bitcoin to equity ratio, the benchmark for Bitcoin is not gold, but equities. And the question is, why can't there be parity between Bitcoin and equities? Why shouldn't we be talking about something more like 100 to 1? Fiat money will be worth a lot less, and it'll be taxed pretty heavily and whatnot. But I think, I'm still hopeful that if Bitcoin goes up by a factor of 100, you'll make some money, a modest amount of money, in real terms. At the very minimum, what I think, it's always hard to know where Bitcoin goes from here. It's $43,000 today. Where does it go? What I like to say is that Bitcoin is always the most honest market in the world. It's the most efficient market, and it was the canary in the coal mine. It was telling us that the inflation was coming in the last 2 years as it went from 5,000-6,000 up by a factor of 10x. It is telling us that the central banks are bankrupt, that we are at the end of the fiat money regime. I think the central bankers, Mr. Powell, people like that, should be extremely grateful to Bitcoin because it's the last warning they're going to get. They've chosen to ignore it, and they will have to pay the consequences for that in the years ahead. But let me come back to this question: why has Bitcoin not yet gone to 100,000 to $1 million of Bitcoin? Why has it not yet converged with gold, or even with the equity markets more broadly? What is it going to take for this to happen? And I know that sort of the ways we often talk about businesses or technologies is how great the technology is, how great the code is, how great the math is. We should think of it at least in one dimension as sort of a political question, and it's a movement, and it's a political question whether this movement is going to succeed, or whether the enemies of the movement are going to succeed in stopping us. And so I want to maybe end with an enemies list, a list of people who I think are stopping Bitcoin, and they all have, many of them have, there's sort of a lot of them. They tend to have this sort of nameless, faceless bureaucrat perspective, which is of course one of the ways they hide. But we're going to try to expose them and realize that this is sort of what we have to fight for Bitcoin to go 10x or 100x from here. I think the sociopathic grandpa from Omaha is perhaps the most honest and the most direct in it, and you have to sort of think of it's of course, on some level, these people aren't always just talking their book. It's sort of, they have some sort of institutional bias. If you're a money manager, you want to pretend that it's complicated to invest. And if all you have to do is buy Bitcoin, you know, that's like ridiculous. All these people are out of business. You know, it's I mean, there was a version of this also with gold. They never liked gold either, because if all you had to do was own gold, that's something everybody can do. But there's sort of an institutional bias, sort of a center-left political bias. There's, of course, the New York City banker bias. Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan. You can get quotes like this from any number of these people. And then I would say, you know, another one, even more obscure, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, where, you know, if you have these sort of large institutional investors, they need to be allocating some of their money to Bitcoin. When they manage state pension funds in the US, or they get trillions of dollars in assets, when they choose not to allocate to Bitcoin, that is a deeply political choice, and we need to be pushing back on them. The Larry Fink quote is sort of representative, I think, of a whole genre of anti-Bitcoin things where, you know, and you have to always put it in some context, but pro-blockchain is an anti-Bitcoin term, very typically. So it's like, I love the blockchain, but, you know, not so sure about this Bitcoin, don't need Bitcoin, we can move on to the blockchain, move along, this is not, you know, not the currency you're looking for, move along, move along. You know, and if we sort of combine all of these things, and perhaps the real enemy is ESG. And the thing that's sort of, I would say, fundamentally honest about Bitcoin is that we are just at this one, you know, sort of low velocity, high value end of the spectrum. And then if you look at something like Ethereum, you are, you will say that it's high velocity, it's going to be sort of a frictionless payment system, but then it's also going to have incredible amounts of intrinsic value. And there's probably something about all those things that doesn't quite add up. If we look at the current market caps, 830 billion versus 386 billion of Ethereum. But if we map Bitcoin onto gold and Ethereum onto Visa, well, Ethereum's worth roughly as much as Visa, so it's fairly valued. You know, if you have a seamless, frictionless payment system, you know, it's worth $400 billion. As it works, the gas fees have to go down. It has to become completely frictionless to work. And then, whereas gold is 12 trillion, and if Bitcoin is going to replace gold, the question is really, why is it so undervalued? What is it going to take for it to go up to the 10x? And I'm going to close on that a little bit later. One of the great features of Bitcoin, and it's always a question whether it's a bug or a feature, but I would submit that in the sort of more heavy-handed statist world, it is far more of a feature than a bug, is that Bitcoin is not a company. It does not have a board. We do not know who Satoshi is. And in some ways, all these things seemed extreme in the world of the 2010s, where, you know, the inflation was low, the regulations were not the worst, and it seems extremely prescient for the world of the 2020s. The finance gerontocracy that runs the country through whatever silly virtue signaling / hate factory term like ESG they have, versus what I would call, you know, what we have to think of as a revolutionary youth movement, and we have to just go out from this conference and take over the world.
Peter Thiel has been thinking about virtual money for a while. He co-founded PayPal in 1998, then departed to run a series of investment firms, including Founders Fund. This appearance was a rare recent moment in the public spotlight. Thiel has stepped away from investing and from high-profile moments like these, focusing his efforts instead on Republican politics. But the Bitcoin 2022 conference is on his home turf. Thiel suggested that Bitcoin's price could still increase 100 times over as it currently trades at $43,665, off more than 30% from highs reached last November. But before it gets to something like $4.3 million a coin, the cryptocurrency would need to see considerably further adoption driven by large institutions. So if you agree with Peter Thiel's comments about Bitcoin enemies causing problems for the crypto, tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.